Phonological Theories 1. Introduction. We are now getting to the more technical parts of the course. Our assumption is that we have been paying close attention to issues raised earlier in previous chapters. Now, we need to follow the discussion more attentively so that we will not be confused. In this study section, we shall start a discussion of the various phonological theories that are ideal to be understood at this level. This lecture will be linked up with subsequent lectures on phonological theories. Learning outcomes for study section 3. When you have studied this section, you should be able to define and use correctly all of the key words printed in bold. Identify the significance or usefulness of phonemics. List the tools used by phoneticists to determine a phoneme in a language. Discuss the tenets of classical phonemics. 1. Journey to phonemics. We shall take a quick look at what theory means before discussing phonological theories specifically. A theory is an ideal or set of ideals that is intended to explain something about life or the world. It is a set of facts, propositions, or principles analyzed in their relation to one another and used to explain a phenomenon. It is a set of facts, propositions, or principles analyzed in their relation to one another and used to explain a phenomenon. In the case of phonology, a phonological theory will explain certain phonological phenomena in a language or related or unrelated languages. In the case of English, there are different theories on various aspects of the language. Even on phonology, there are many theories from different schools of thought and spanning over years. Do note that a succeeding theory is sometimes a reaction to a preceding one. Generative phonology is a reaction to the claims of classical phonemes, while metrical phonology is also a reaction to the claims of generative phonology. A basic fact you should know as students of phonology is that linguists keep attempting to understand how language is organized in the human brain. Up to the 1950s, the focus was on the analysis of what the speaker produced, i.e., at the surface level. However, current theories are based on the idea that what is stored in the brain, abstract, and what is produced in reality may not be the same. Hint: a theory is formed to explain certain phenomena. Though the views of the various phonological theories vary, the majority hold that spoken language can be broken down into a string of sounds units, which are technically called phonemes, and that each human language has a fixed set drawn from this pool of phonemes. There is also the relatively general notion that most phonemes can be arranged into groups. Let us look at English, for example. The sounds P, B, T, D, K, G fall into the group called plosives because they all have the same manner of articulation. The grouping of phonemes could be based on the place of articulation, voice, etc. So we talk of bilabial sounds, alveolar sounds, voiced and voiceless sounds, etc. When the importance of the phoneme became widely accepted in the 1930s and 40s, many attempts were made to develop scientific ways of establishing the phonemes of a language and listen each phoneme allophones. This was known as phonemics. Nowadays, little importance is given to this type of analysis, and it is considered a minor branch of phonology, except for the practical purpose of devising writing systems for previously unwritten languages. Classical phonemics. The term phonemics refers to the study of the sound system of a given language, as well as the analysis and classification of the phonemes of such language. A person who engages in this study is a phonemicist, though there are different schools of thought such as the Prague School of Phonology and the American Structural Phonemic belonging to this group. What is important is that the phoneme is of central concern to the phonemist irrespective of the approach. Phonemic phonology became important because it provided a descriptive account of dialects and languages that has never been transcribed before. It derives its greatest strength from its practical orientation, which has proved very beneficial to language teaching and learning. Some linguists believe Noam Chomsky's criticism of phonemics are largely unjust because Noam Chomsky, has not examined the concept of the phoneme in its own theoretical framework, but in the framework of generative phonology. They believe Chomsky's generative phonology should therefore be regarded as an alternative account of sound structure rather than a valid critique of phonemic phonology. This will be clearer to you as we move on in this lecture. Do not forget that the focus of classical phonemics is the phoneme. It is concerned with the description of phonemic and morphophonemic alternations. It views the phoneme as an entity that is not further divisible. To classical phonemists, the phoneme is the smallest indivisible unit of sound. This is contrary to the view of generative phonologists. Though we shall discuss generative phonology later, it is good to refer to issues that will make you understand the theories and their areas of disagreement as we go on in this discussion. As earlier mentioned and emphasized, classical phonemics views the phoneme as the fundamental unit of phonology. There are, however, different views on the phoneme. Some view the phoneme as a phonetic reality, some from the perspective of function, and others as a psychological reality. As a phonetic reality, it is believed that sounds that belong to the same phoneme share common phonetic properties. Let's look at our example of the phoneme. In slants, P. The phonetic reality of the phoneme P will be the allophones, which are PH, PN, PL, PO, P. From the perspective of function, it is believed that distinct phonemes function in languages to distinguish meaning, e.g., pan and pen have the same sounds he and n, distinguishing the meanings of the two words. Another description is one which holds the phoneme as a psychological reality. Such view emphasize the phoneme as a mental concept. It is believed to be what the native speaker conceives in his head, which may not be what is altered in reality. Though their focuses differ, on what do most phonological theories agree? That spoken language can be broken down into a string of sounds units, which are technically called phonemes, and that each human language has a fixed set drawn from this pool of phonemes. Classical phoneticists use certain criteria for determining what constitutes a phoneme in a language. Minimal pairs, minimal sets, and complementary distribution, which we discussed earlier under terminologies are means by which this is done. When similar sounds are mutually exclusive, that is where one occurs, the other does not. They are often queried as allophones of the same phoneme. For instance, in bracket PH, in bracket PN, PL, PO, and P are mutually exclusive. Where one occurs, the other does not. Therefore, in the example above, PH, PN, PL, PO, and P are allophones, phonetic or contextual variants of the P phoneme. Also, when sounds occur as the only contrasting sounds of a pair or set, they are queried as distinct phonemes of a language, as long as they account for a change in meaning. Let us look at the minimal pair set: bin, pin, nip, nib, kin, gene, tim, dim. You can see that in English language, P, B, K, T, D, and G are distinct phonemes because they occur as minimal contrast in the pairs and they account for a change in meaning. However, while using complementary distribution as guide to determining the allophones of a phoneme, we have to watch out for some exceptions. For instance, the H sounds and the ing sound do not occur in the same position in the English language. While H occurs only as initial sounds of a syllable, as we have in ought and ahead. Ahead being 2 syllables. Ing only occurs as the final sound of a syllable. Yet, these 2 sounds are not to be considered as allophones of the same phoneme. We can then ask why. The 2 sounds have no phonetics likeness, as we often find to exist between allophones of the same phoneme. We can therefore claim one is changing to the other for certain phonetically generated reason or reasons. It's a sheer coincidence that they are mutually exclusive. Summary of study section 3. In the foregoing study section, we have defined a theory as an idea or set of ideas that is intended to explain something about life or the world. We also specifically defined phonological theory as an explanation for phonological phenomena in a language. We discussed how classical phonemes dealt only basically with the surface structure of languages, but subsequent phonological theories proposing an underlying structure. We then went on to share the knowledge that though the views of the various phonological theories vary, the majority hold that spoken language can be broken down into a string of sounds units, which are technically called phonemes, and that each human language has a fixed set drawn from this pool of phonemes. While discussing classical phonemics, we learned that it became important because it provided a descriptive amount of dialects and languages that had never been transcribed before, and that it derived its greatest strength from its practical orientation, which has proved very beneficial to language teaching and learning. We also discussed the phoneme as central to classical phonemics and that there are different views on the phoneme. Some view the phoneme as a phonetic reality, some from the perspective of function, and others as a psychological reality. We went on to discuss that classical phonemicists use certain criteria for determining what constitutes a phoneme in a language: minimal pairs, minimal sets, and complementary distribution. End of study section 3. Thanks for listening.